Hi, PhasedPrism. It's Mike Sarno. I'm responding to your video response to me. I apologize. I have my notes. I don't want to miss any of the questions. Okay, let's get to it. First off, you said I responded harshly to your "you could be wrong" comment. I wasn't upset. I was passionate. I don't like the fact that we see a lot of people on YouTube and elsewhere, but specifically on YouTube, who don't have open minds, who aren't open to the idea that they could be wrong. And the fact that you had to use it as a quote reminded me of something that I don't like. All right. You said faith is belief without evidence, and that I had faith in God. Well, I will say that I simply agreed with you when you said that I had faith in God. I'll go with that. And if you want to say faith is belief without evidence, that's fine. I'll go with that as well. My reason for not needing evidence is the logical conclusion to "I think, therefore I am," which leads to the conclusion that something exists, and since something exists, there is a ground of being. I am calling that ground of being God. I am not referring to a supernatural creator, as you have put it. I do not deduce that there's anything other than a creative force, the possibility for creation. Okay? The ground of being is God. God is the ground of being. Define ultimate reality. Okay, go to the Wikipedia page on the article is called Absolute, and in parentheses it's philosophy. There's a good definition there. I'll read it here for people who are too lazy to use their clicking finger. The absolute is the totality of things, all that is, whether it has been discovered or not. It is usually conceived of as a unitary state of the external cosmos and internal spiritual consciousness, at least insofar as it can be acknowledged by the human mind, and is intelligible. In some varieties of philosophy, the absolute describes ultimate reality. It contrasts with finite things considered individually, known collectively as relative. Further in the article, it states the absolute, either under that name or as the ground of being, or the uncaused first cause, or some similar concept, also figures in several of the attempted proofs of the existence of God, particularly the ontological argument and the cosmological argument. So that's kind of what I'm doing there. Oh, let's see. Oh, define shadows of existence. Okay, I was speaking metaphorically about that which lies just beyond evidence, what evidence may lead us to. I was also trying to be clever in evoking images of the allegory of the cave. Succeeded or not, you decide. All right, moving on to... Oh, you wanted to understand more about my understanding of the experimental versus the experiential. What experiential things specifically you were asking about can't be reproduced? Mysticism cannot be reproduced. It's different for every individual. So that's one example. Okay, you asked about how you got your math wrong. All right. I don't have a PowerPoint blackboard, but let's go to the poor man's PowerPoint, lack thereof, blackboard. We take the formula x over y. X, the amount of evidence found for the supernatural creator entity that you're using as the definition for God, over y, the number of places that we've looked for evidence for the supernatural creator entity that you've called God. This is your definition of God, not the one that I would choose to use. Regardless, we have x, the amount of evidence, and I'll grant you whatever value you want to put for x, because we're trying to find evidence for this supernatural creator entity that you've put forth, and that type of evidence would be found outside of time and space. And the number of times we've looked outside of time and space would be 0. X over 0 is undefined. Okay, so you also said the universe works without divine intervention. Yeah, I didn't disagree with that. In the original video that started our thread, I specifically mentioned to Joe that that's not really part of the argument. I'm not saying that that there's some divine intervention. I'm saying just the mere existence of what I call the divine makes these things possible. I think you missed my point on the strawberry analogy. Yeah, you can easily pick it apart. God's not a food. You can't find God at the grocery store. God doesn't have seeds. God isn't red. Yeah, God's not a strawberry. Sure, there's a lot of things there. The whole point of the analogy was that there are experiential things. What does a strawberry taste like? There's no way for me to describe that to you. I can use metaphor, it tastes like something else, but even then, I have to assume that you've tasted this other thing and we experience it in the same way. There's really no way for me to impart that knowledge, but if you had a strawberry, boom, that would be done. How do you experience God on a spiritual level that cannot be explained with science? Mysticism, again, there is some neurology, and we're beginning to understand some of that, but we don't understand all of it. And again, as I mentioned before, when we look at God as metaphor, that helps lead us in certain directions. So that helps us to establish some scientific method. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the impetus for early science was trying to understand God's creation. Okay, so it's got some real use there. You said that I am deducing that God exists because I have no other explanation. I'm not trying to explain anything. I'm not trying to explain physical causes. I do invoke the divine for the explanation of purpose, but you said it was the God of the gaps. Well, that's, again, I'm not talking about the physical world. You said, that we're really talking about a spiritual creator versus the idea that energy has always existed. Why choose one over the other? Yeah, right. Why choose one over the other? I choose both. I'm talking about the ground of being, the absolute, the totality. If that involves energy always existing, yeah, sure. You mentioned, well, at least we have proof of the existence of energy. And again, we have, absolute metaphysical proof of the ground of being. I think, therefore I am, therefore I know things exist, therefore there is a ground of being. And I call that God. Okay, with abiogenesis, I think you missed my point there. I was not invoking a supernatural entity. I was pointing out how both you and I take the scientific viewpoint, which is faith in the null hypothesis. And because we can take that leap of faith, that's similar to what I'm talking about when I say, I'm willing to go with the metaphor of God. I'm willing to say, I know rock solid the ground of being, and I'm willing to express the metaphor and look for other examples and ways of interconnectedness using that framework to describe reality. Okay. You said because spirituality is connected with consciousness and consciousness is connected to the physical world, then there should be physical evidence of God. Yes, existence. Again, reference the few things I've just said. And you asked, why are we searching for answers in places that don't exist? Because that's where you gotta look. We're talking about these things that are atemporal, acausal, aspatial. That's the idea. We're talking about these abstract concepts, and the abstract concepts don't exist in the physical world. They exist in the mind, in the abstract. So I hope I've answered your questions. I've kept it under 10 minutes, so I've done the best that I can. So thanks for your questions. If you have any more, great. And thanks for watching.